Paul MacLean, the originator of Triune Brain theory, said, "Man finds himself in the predicament that nature has endowed him essentially with three types of brains, all of which, despite great dissimilarities, must function together. One of these brains is basically reptilian, the second has been inherited from lower mammals, and the third is a late evolutionary development that has made man peculiarly man. Cramming a reptile, a mammal, and a human into one skull. Probably very problematic, right? You bet. As MacLean put it, speaking allegorically of these brains within a brain, we might imagine that when the psychiatrist bids the patient to lie on the couch, he is asking him to stretch out alongside a horse and a crocodile. Don't you think that most people you meet seem more like crocodiles than humans? Many humans resemble cats, solitary, territorial, dogs, pack creatures prone to barking and biting fits, and profound abandonment anxiety. Hamsters, going round and round on their wheels, or rats, competing viciously in the predatory capitalist rat race. Lily Tomlin said, "The trouble with the rat race is that even if you win, you're still a rat." Yup, the biggest, worst rats are the king rats. Those at the top of the predatory capitalist rat pyramid. Paul MacLean wrote, "What engineer would ever think of combining an old-fashioned radio with today's television? Yet, this is what nature has attempted to do in fashioning man. The amazing thing is that we work at all. But do we work? Many people plainly do not. Their animal heritage blocks their human potential. They keep regressing into dog or reptile mode." MacLean wrote, "Less amazing is the fact that so many people go to the psychiatrist to find out why the horse within them keeps throwing them. Most people seem to spend most of their life falling off their horse or being thrown off it and then kicked in the face by its hind legs." MacLean wrote, "In therapy, it has been traditional to try to get the animal within us to talk. Good luck with that. The inner animal is inarticulate. It grunts and snarls. It doesn't communicate. It feels. It doesn't reason." MacLean wrote, "But the probable fact of the matter is that, like our house pets, it is simply incapable of communicating in verbal terms. What would house pets say if they were put on the psychiatrist's couch and could say what they really thought? Would it be a tale of horror unimagined? Do you want to know what your beloved pet really thinks about you?" MacLean wrote, "In evolution, one might say that the nervous system develops like a house to which wings and superstructure are added. In an evolutionary sense, man has inherited the basic structure and organization of three types of brains. As the brain of oldest heritage conforms to a pattern of organization typical of reptiles, one might refer to it as man's reptilian brain. It forms the matrix of the brain and comprises much of the so-called reticular system, the midbrain, and the basal ganglia. A cerebral mantle is present, but it has not yet differentiated into a true cortex. Yup, that inner reptile ain't going anywhere and is becoming more and more prominent in today's world. Thanks, social media, the domain of the crocodiles and pond scum and every species of rat." MacLean wrote, "We tend to blame the worldwide power struggle for our direst problems. But is it realized that this struggle reflects the established organization of man's brain? Our three brains are constantly struggling, fighting for power, and the human neocortex rarely wins. The inner reptile or chimp is usually in charge." MacLean wrote, "No matter what speed man attains with his new mammalian brain, he faces discontent unless he learns to accommodate to the horse and buggy pace of his animal brains. To accommodate them or transcend them? Why not sublimate them? Why not harness them as auxiliaries of the neocortex rather than bugs in the system? Glitches, gremlins." In short, MacLean proposed that the reptilian brain, inner crocodile, is responsible for instinctual behavior. The limbic system, inner chimp, is responsible for emotions, and the neocortex, inner human, for reasoning. A rational world results if the inner human can control the inner chimp and inner crocodile, if the inner human can override the other systems. If the chimp dominates, we get a world of irrational feelings. If the inner crocodile is in charge, we get a world of basic survival and extreme hate and violence. Carl Sagan said, "Permit me to say that I was enthralled by the content of your presentation. The tripartite brain is very reminiscent not only of the ego, superego distinction of Freud, but also of the white horse, black horse charioteer image in Plato's Phaedrus. The triune structure pops up in many places and is often highly useful. Hegel spoke of a triadic system of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, forming his famous dialectic. The thesis and antithesis compete and then give way to a compromise, a synthesis, which serves as a new thesis, and then the whole process starts again and promises to conclude with an ultimate synthesis." Sagan wrote, "One of the most engaging views of the subsequent evolution of the brain is a story of the successive accretion and specialization of three further layers surmounting the spinal cord, hindbrain, and midbrain. After each evolutionary step, the older portions of the brain still exist and must still be accommodated, but a new layer with new functions has been added. You can see how easily this setup could all go wrong, and it does all the time, which is why humanity is the way it is. In fact, is humanity actually getting madder and stupider? Things aren't getting better, are they?" Sagan said, "MacLean has developed a captivating model of brain structure and evolution that he calls the Triune Brain. We are obliged," he says, "to look at ourselves and the world through the eyes of three quite different mentalities, two of which lack the power of speech. Can you conceive of how problematic it is that the inner reptile and inner chimp cannot communicate with each other or with the inner human? Yet they still influence the inner human via unconscious forces, complexes, images, drives, instincts, and all the rest of it." Sagan said, "The human brain, MacLean holds, amounts to three interconnected biological computers, each with its own special intelligence, its own subjectivity, its own sense of time and space, its own memory, motor, and other functions. Getting these three interconnected biological computers with drastically different programming and subjectivities to smoothly align is, as human history shows, as difficult as it gets." Sagan said, "Each brain corresponds to a separate major evolutionary step. The three brains are said to be distinguished neuroanatomically and functionally, and contain strikingly different distributions of the neurochemicals dopamine and cholinesterase. Drugs imitating neurochemicals can radically change your behavior. Will we need to use drugs to inhibit the chimp and crocodile?" Sagan said, "At the most ancient part of the human brain lies the spinal cord, the medulla and pons, which comprise the hindbrain, and the midbrain. This combination of spinal cord, hindbrain, and midbrain MacLean calls the neural chassis. It contains the basic neural machinery for reproduction and self-preservation, including regulation of the heart, blood circulation, and respiration. In a fish or an amphibian, it is almost all the brain there is. This part of the brain still exerts an astonishing influence over humanity, especially when it gets angry, thus provoking feelings of violence. Social media speaks most to the inner reptile, or rat," Sagan said. "But a reptile or higher animal deprived of its forebrain is, according to MacLean, as motionless and aimless as an idling vehicle without a driver. The neocortex is what makes us truly human, but we are not yet human enough. If we could migrate almost entirely to our inner human, marginalizing the inner chimp and inner reptile, our behavior would be transformed beyond recognition. The world would be wholly different." Bessel van der Kolk wrote, "The neuroscientist Paul MacLean, who developed the three-part description of the brain that I've used here, compared the relationship between the rational brain and the emotional brain to that between a more or less competent rider and his unruly horse. As long as the weather is calm and the path is smooth, the rider can feel in excellent control. But unexpected sounds or threats from other animals can make the horse bolt, forcing the rider to hold on for dear life. For most people, their horse has bolted and they have no control. They are going wherever the horse takes them. At some point, it will throw them and then kick them in the head. Don't you think most people seem to have serious brain damage?